my house is on fire, I would take this one out of all of them.
The viral TikToks from Chinese factory workers, the internet is now in a frenzy over claims that some of the most iconic designer bags are actually born in the...
A lot of requests, do Hermès next. And that's why we're here in the Highland Park Mall.
Made in China. Or maybe made in Chile. Oh yeah, that should be a thing, by the way.
If your house was burning down and you could save just one thing, would it be a $38,000 Hermès Birkin bag? What if I told you that bag might have come from the same Chinese factory churning out $200 dupes on AliExpress? That's not a joke. That's the question millions are asking right now as TikTok explodes with footage from inside so-called luxury manufacturing lines. And the face leading this unraveling? Jennifer Lopez. Yes, J-Lo, global icon, red carpet royalty, and walking emblem of wealth. Just dropped a comment so cutting, so casually disruptive, it cracked the designer world at its core. What she said was simple, but the silence it provoked? Deafening. This isn't just about Hermès. It's about every label hiding behind the Made in France fantasy. And once you see what's really behind the curtain, the luxury illusion may be over for good. It started like any other TikTok. No fancy intro, no dramatic music, just a handheld video inside what looked like a typical factory in China. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, tables stacked with leather scraps, and workers quietly stitching away. But then, boom, the casual voiceover dropped a bomb that would send luxury fashion into a tailspin. We're making bags for Hermès, Gucci, Chanel, and Prada. The worker said, almost bored, like he was rattling off a grocery list. And just like that, TikTok lost its mind. This wasn't some sketchy knockoff operation. The caption didn't mention replicas or dupes. No blurred-out labels. No coy language. Just raw, unfiltered footage showing luxury bags, Hermès Birkins included, being assembled in a nondescript Chinese factory. Real logos, real stitching, real materials. Viewers were stunned. The comments came in fast and furious. Wait, are these real? Are luxury bags actually made in China? Is this why my $30,000 Birkin took a year to arrive? What shook people wasn't just where the bags were being made. It was the fact that the video seemed so matter-of-fact. No secrecy, no shame, just an insider casually exposing the luxury world's best-kept secret like it was nothing. And that's when it hit. Maybe this wasn't a rogue leak. Maybe this was normal, and we were just never supposed to see it. If the first video was a spark, what came next was a wildfire. Within days, TikTok became a digital crime scene. More footage surfaced, different angles, different voices, but all telling the same disturbing story. One showed an entire assembly line of Hermès Kellys lined up like burgers on a conveyor belt. Another showed a Chanel purse being sealed in plastic wrap next to a stack of Prada dust bags, right under a fluorescent sign with simplified Chinese characters. You couldn't scroll for more than 5 seconds without stumbling into another alleged expose. And these weren't stitched or reposted clips. These were fresh recordings, direct from the source. Factories deep in China's manufacturing districts, often captioned with casual phrases like, just another day in the workshop, or worse, this one's going to Paris. Paris! That was the moment people realized we weren't looking at copies. We were looking at the originals. One video zoomed in on rows and rows of handbags hanging from hooks like drying laundry. The bags were in various stages of completion, some missing handles, others without logos yet. But there was one thing they all had in common: a clean, crisp tag sewn discreetly into the lining. Made in France. Let that sink in. These bags weren't sitting in France. They weren't near France. They were thousands of miles away in industrial Guangdong or Dongguan or some other factory zone, being handled by teams of workers who, by their own admission, produced these bags en masse. And yet, they bore that coveted label, Made in France. As if that label alone was enough to hypnotize the buyer into thinking they were cradling European craftsmanship. The most damning footage came from a video that has since been deleted, but not before it racked up nearly 4 million views. A worker films her day on the job, walking through a sleek, eerily quiet factory. On one side, a line of identical Birkin bags, all in classic tan leather, stacked like pancakes. On the other, a robotic arm calibrating stitching patterns on what she casually calls the high-tier batch. Her voice is relaxed, but her words are brutal. These go to VIP clients. They're the same as the others, just double-check more. The comments exploded. Wait, VIP clients? You mean celebrities? Is this what Jlo's bag looked like before it got boxed up? Are you telling me there's a whole tier system for the same product based on who's buying it? But here's the real kicker. What we're seeing isn't anything out of the ordinary in the manufacturing world. Assembly lines, quality control checkpoints, color-coded tags for batches. This is how factories run. This is how fast fashion runs. But it's not how we were told luxury works. Luxury brands like Hermès, Chanel, and Prada have built their reputations on the image of artistry. A lone artisan hunched over a workbench in the south of France. A dusty leather-bound notebook filled with sketches. Tools passed down for generations. That's the fantasy. That's the illusion. But this footage shattered that illusion like a dropped perfume bottle on marble. What we saw instead was automation, bulk processing, efficiency. We saw gloves, yes, but not to protect delicate materials from human hands. No, they were there to maintain speed and cleanliness. We didn't see passion. We saw production quotas. And just like that, the mental image of the solitary Parisian craftsman stitching your Birkin with love and patience vanished, replaced by the cold, unfiltered truth that your $25,000 handbag might have rolled off the same line as a $150 Zara tote, just with better lighting and a made in France tag sewn in after the fact. It didn't matter how carefully the brands tried to control the narrative. The videos spoke for themselves. There were too many, from too many places, with too many consistent details. The jig was up, and that's when people stopped asking, is this real? And started asking something much more dangerous. If this is what we're seeing, were they still hiding? And then, like a thunderclap in couture, Jennifer Lopez entered the chat. It happened quietly at first. A simple comment, no makeup, no glam squad, no red carpet. Just J.Lo, casually replying under a TikTok clip showing Hermès bags being stitched in a Chinese factory. The video was already going viral, but her words? They detonated like a bomb. Why hide the workshops? 5 words. That's all it took. Coming from anyone else, it might have been brushed off. But this was Jennifer Lopez, global icon, luxury powerhouse, the very definition of aspirational fashion. A woman who has worn everything from custom Versace to head-to-toe Valentino, who practically lives in Hermès and Dior. When she speaks, the industry listens. Scratch that. The world listens. Because let's be honest, J.Lo isn't just a consumer of luxury. She is luxury. She's the face of campaigns, the muse behind limited edition drops, the woman fashion houses roll out private jets and closed-door showrooms for. So when she questions the narrative, when she dares to ask why billion-dollar brand are being so secretive about their production practices, that's not a whisper. That's an earthquake. And no, did it shake things up? Fashion insiders scrambled. PR departments at Hermès, Chanel, and Prada reportedly held emergency calls. No comment became the official stance, but the silence only made things worse. Because if J.Lo, Jennifer freaking Lopez, was wondering what was going on behind the curtain, then who else might start asking questions? Her fans, for one, were instantly divided. Some praised her for breaking ranks. Finally, someone on the inside is telling the truth, one commenter wrote. Thank you for standing up for transparency. Others were more skeptical. Sis, you've got closets full of this stuff. You're just now asking questions. The debate quickly spiraled. Was J.Lo being authentic, or was this a calculated PR move to get ahead of a brewing scandal? But the bigger problem wasn't the fans. It was the brands. Jlo's comment was like an uninvited spotlight on a stage built on illusion. If the queen of high fashion was calling out the smoke and mirrors, what hope did the rest of the industry have to keep the fantasy alive? Internally, some insiders whispered that her partnerships with certain luxury houses were under review. Others claimed she was quietly being blacklisted, her invitations drying up, her stylists warned to tread lightly. But here's the twist. J.Lo didn't back down. In fact, she liked several comments calling out fashion's hypocrisy. One even accused a major house of selling Chinese labor wrapped in French lies, and she double-tapped it. That's when things truly spiraled. The gatekeepers were panicking. The fans were awakening. And J.Lo, she had just questioned the throne. The industry now faced an uncomfortable reality. When the queen lifts the veil, everyone else starts looking closer. And this was just the beginning. Follow the money. Always follow the money. Because while TikTok was busy dragging Hermès in the comments, and Jennifer Lopez was lobbing subtle truth bombs, the real panic wasn't happening online. It was happening in boardrooms. Because this isn't just about feelings being hurt or illusions being shattered. This is about billions. And I mean billions with a B. The global luxury goods market is worth over $380 billion. That's more than the GDP of some countries. And sitting comfortably near the top of that mountain, Hermès, a brand that's more than a brand. It's a status symbol, a financial asset, and for many, a religion. With bags like the Birkin and Kelly regularly fetching $20,000 to $150,000 a piece, sometimes more on the resale market, Hermès didn't just sell leather. They sold exclusivity. They sold the fantasy of entering an elite club that most people would never touch. But in 2024, the numbers started doing something they hadn't done in years. They dipped. Hermès shares dropped sharply. So did other legacy brands. Chanel, Prada, even Louis Vuitton's parent company LVMH felt the tremors. At first, analysts chalked it up to market corrections, consumer fatigue, or macroeconomic headwinds. But behind closed doors, the conversation was a lot scarier. The truth? The illusion was cracking, and people were finally seeing through it. In China, where luxury spending has fueled these brands for the last decade, the tides have turned. Chinese consumers, once the most loyal buyers of European prestige, are waking up. The younger generation is no longer interested in chasing Western labels that come with a side of colonial elitism and outsourced labor. In fact, Gen Z shoppers in China and beyond are openly rejecting luxury products that feel hollow or hypocritical. They want transparency. They want ethics. They want to know who made this bag, where was it made, and why does it cost more than a year's rent if it came from the same factory as a budget handbag? These are not the questions luxury brands are prepared to answer. For years, they've thrived on opacity. They told us bags were handcrafted in France or Italy, knowing full well that Swiss-made and made in France are legal loopholes. Words that can legally be slapped on a product if it's assembled in Europe, even if 90% of it was manufactured in China. But now, the smoke is clearing. And when the illusion breaks, so does the pricing power. The worst part? These revelations don't just damage reputations. They deflate the very core of what makes luxury profitable. Because once buyers realize that the $30,000 Birkin was sewn in the same industrial zone as a $300 Michael Kors bag, the spell is broken. And if the bag no longer feels exclusive or mysterious, if it starts to feel mass-produced, then it's just leather and hardware. No different than anything else. So yes, this hurts. But it hurts in the one place luxury brands fear most, their margins. And the message is clear. Gen Z isn't here for the illusion. They're not buying $10,000 dreams wrapped in $50 labor anymore. They're watching the money trail, asking questions, and they're not afraid to walk away. Because in 2024, the myth of luxury might finally be too expensive to maintain. Enter Tanner Leatherstein, a name that sends chills through the boardrooms of luxury fashion. He's not your typical TikToker. No lip syncs, no glam shots, just a scalpel, a leather apron, and an unsettling obsession with the truth. Tanner is a leather artisan turned luxury executioner. His weapon of choice? Deconstruction. Literally. He cuts up luxury handbags, Birkin, Prada, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and shows the world what's really inside. And spoiler alert, it's not worth what you think. In one of his most viral videos, Tanner takes a pair of scissors to a Hermès Birkin bag. Not a knockoff, a real one. The kind that costs more than most people's cars. As the camera zooms in, he dissects the stitching, peels back the lining and exposes the unthinkable. Plastic reinforcements, low-grade filler, and tanning methods no different from mid-tier brands selling at a fraction of the price. His conclusion? Brutal. This bag cost Hermès maybe $200 to make, $600 if we're being generous. But it sells for $20,000 or more. You're not paying for craftsmanship. You're paying for exclusivity. You're paying to be seen. And that's the dagger in the heart of the fantasy. Because Tanner doesn't just tear apart bags. He tears apart myths. The myth that French artisans labor for weeks in candlelit ateliers. The myth that luxury equals unmatched quality. The myth that price reflects value. With each cut, he exposes what brands don't want you to know. That much of what you're buying is smoke, mirrors, and masterful marketing. His findings are damning. Some Italian leather turns out to be bonded scraps, leather dust pressed with glue. Others use plastic to shape the structure instead of costly natural materials. Some linings are polyester. Many bags have edge painting so cheap it cracks within months. But the real scandal? Tanner has proven that some luxury bags are constructed no better than bags sold at Zara or Coach, sometimes even worse. And while brands scramble to discredit him, his receipts speak louder than their silence. Every bag he dissects becomes a case file. Every stitch he pulls is another lie unraveled. Tanner isn't trying to cancel luxury. He's just asking the question no brand wants you to think about. If the bag isn't better, why is it priced like a mortgage? Because here's the truth. You're not paying for the leather. You're not paying for the stitching. You're paying for the illusion, for the story, for the dream. And dreams? Dreams don't come with refunds. Once upon a time, luxury was sacred. A Hermès Birkin wasn't just a handbag. It was a rite of passage. A whispered symbol of power, wealth, and insider status. You couldn't just walk into a store and buy one. You had to be invited. You had to know someone. You had to wait. And that wait? That was part of the magic. Luxury used to mean mystery, rarity, artistry. But TikTok tore the veil straight off. What once lived behind velvet ropes is now laid bare on phone screens in 4K. And Gen Z? They're not gasping, they're laughing. Because the sacred is starting to look suspiciously assembly line. Videos with millions of views now show influencers casually unboxing Hermès bags while pointing out crooked stitching, stiff handles, or, God forbid, made in China tags tucked deep into the lining. Users are peeling off the branding and exposing the bare bones. They're asking the one question luxury never wanted to answer. Why does this feel like fast fashion in a fancy box? The old school myth said luxury was exclusive because it was rare. But today's reality? These bags are mass-produced in discreet overseas factories, wrapped in tissue paper, and shipped off to boutiques dressed like temples. The spell is broken. And Gen Z, raised on the internet, fluent in side-eye, isn't buying it. This generation has lived through every scam. Fire Festival, Shine Halls, AI-generated influencers. They've seen how aesthetics get manufactured and how luxury can be faked, copied, or worse, co-signed by exploitation. They don't worship brands. They dissect them. To them, the word luxury doesn't mean status anymore. It means proof of labor, ethical sourcing, transparency. Show us the factory. Show us the artisan. Show us why it's worth $15,000. Or admit that it's not. Because luxury without integrity is just another grift. And maybe the real exclusivity in 2025 isn't the bag on your arm. It's knowing you didn't fall for the illusion. When the allegations broke, Chinese factories, hidden sourcing, Tanner Leatherstein's viral dissections. Everyone waited for the same thing. A response from Hermès. But what came? Nothing. No statement. No denial. Not even a carefully crafted, we take these claims seriously. The silence was deafening. In the age of social media, silence isn't neutral. It's strategic. It's the modern equivalent of pleading the fifth. And when a billion-dollar brand with global reach and a fortress of PR experts says nothing while evidence spreads like wildfire, people don't see poise. They see guilt. Hermès could have released a factory tour. They could have shown the artisans, the workshops, the proof. They could have engaged with the questions. Instead, They chose a blackout. And that choice? It only made things worse. Because in today's digital court of public opinion, silence doesn't buy you time. It signs your confession. Influencers noticed. TikTokers who once flaunted Birkins now throw side-eye. Some deleted their unboxings entirely. Others posted follow-ups, questioning the craftsmanship, asking hard questions like, have we all been duped? The backlash snowballed. Not because Hermès was proven guilty, but because they refused to prove themselves innocent. And let's be honest, this isn't 1995. Brands don't get to hide behind glossy ads and velvet storefronts anymore. This is the era of receipts, whistleblowers, and viral exposés. If your silence leaves space for the narrative to spiral, it will, with or without your permission. Hermès built an empire on exclusivity and control. But now, that silence is costing them something much more fragile: trust. And in the luxury game, once trust is gone, the illusion crumbles next. It started as whispers, then TikToks, then a full-blown credibility crisis. Now, the Hermès fallout is impossible to ignore. Collectors, once proud to flaunt their six-figure closets, are quietly tucking their Birkins away. Influencers who build entire brands around unboxings and come shopping with me vlogs have gone suspiciously silent. Some have deleted videos. Others have turned off comments. Why? Because the comments turn brutal. If Jlo's not sure, why should I be? Imagine paying $20,000 for a bag made in the same factory as Shine. Luxury isn't luxury if it's a lie. Even die-hard fans are questioning everything. Forums that used to obsess over leather grains and hardware colorways are now flooded with side-by-side comparisons of authentic bags and mass-produced lookalikes. Some can't even tell the difference. That's the point. The shame is real, and the embarrassment? Palpable. This wasn't supposed to happen to Hermès. This wasn't supposed to happen to them. But when Jennifer Lopez, a woman synonymous with glamour and elite access, goes viral for saying she doesn't even know if her Birkin is real, it sends a message loud and clear. No one is untouchable. And now the spotlight is moving. Chanel, Dior, Louis Vuitton. Eyes are turning. Questions are coming. Where are your factories? Who makes your bags? How do you justify $10,000 price tags when labor is outsourced to hidden locations and profit margins soar on the backs of invisible hands? The pressure is mounting, and this time, silence won't save them. Luxury brands are standing at a crossroads. Speak up and show receipts, or watch their status symbols crack under the weight of public scrutiny. Because in 2025, the biggest flex isn't what you own. It's knowing where it came from and who paid the real price. This was never an attack. This was a revelation. Because Jennifer Lopez didn't slam Hermès. She didn't burn a Birkin on TikTok or launch a boycott. She simply asked the question no one expected from a woman who could walk into any boutique on earth and say, I'll take one in every color. I don't even know if it's real. And in that one line, everything shifted. Because when a queen expresses doubt, the court doesn't shrug, it panics. The silence from Hermès? That wasn't confidence. That was shock. Because when the woman who is luxury, who embodies the aspirational, starts peeling back the illusion, it's not just her bag under scrutiny. It's the entire kingdom. This wasn't J.Lo tearing down a brand. This was J.Lo waking up to the game. The smoke, the mirrors, the quiet outsourcing, the whispered sourcing secrets, the $25 straps dressed up in $25,000 prestige. She didn't need to scream. She didn't need to rage. All she had to do was lift the veil. And once the veil is lifted, there's no putting it back. Women who once begged to be waitlisted for years are now asking, wait, why? Collectors who hoarded Birkins like stocks are wondering if the real value was just a myth. Fashionistas are realizing that made in France might be just as performative as a runway show. J.Lo didn't start a rebellion. She triggered a renaissance. Because this wasn't just about Hermès, it was about power. About waking up from a spell cast by brands who convinced us that scarcity equals status, that craftsmanship means secrecy, and that price always means prestige. But not anymore. Because once the queen questions the throne, the kingdom doesn't just tremble. It transforms. The luxury world has reached a breaking point, and now it faces a choice: evolve or die, because the rules have changed. Gen Z doesn't want fantasy. They want receipts. They want to know who stitched the seam, where the leather came from, and who's profiting off the markup. Trust us no longer cuts it. Not when investigative TikToks go viral. Not when whistleblowers are speaking out. And definitely not when even J.Lo is side-eyeing her Birkin. So now, Hermès and every brand like it stands at a crossroads. Path 1. Transparency. Open the books. Reveal the supply chains. Show us the truth behind the price tag. Reinvent luxury not as secrecy, but as accountability. Prove that what you're selling is more than myth, it's merit. Path 2. Extinction. Keep pretending. Keep hiding. Keep inflating. But know this exposure is coming. And the moment the illusion cracks, the whole empire could collapse. Because no one wants to pay $20,000 for a lie. Not anymore. The next generation isn't dazzled by velvet ropes and brushed gold. They're not chasing clout. They're chasing clarity. And if brands can't give it, they'll be replaced by independents, by disruptors, by anyone brave enough to be real. So here we are. The fantasy is fading. The curtain is lifting. And one question remains. Will Hermès step into the light or become the next luxury brand swallowed by its own silence?